where a lady got married, and her brother, the husband, and the brother, she was about Shuva, and he was the brother who was not from was very angry, for many reasons, and didn't talk to each other. The younger man, was the 20s, he came down with cancer. She was terrified he's not going to give her Chaliza. Imagine, brother's done. What? Yeah, but if you give a get, you can't be together. So they had cancer. Yeah, but they don't make such a get. So
the husband was sick.
The husband got cancer, and they knew right away they're going to have a little bit of a hard time having children, but they were just newlyweds, married 2 years, a year and a half, and he came down with cancer, and so there's one way to do. Well, the Rabbi said you give a get with a tanai that should be chal shu achas mesusi, but they're not allowed to be together. Yeah, you're not allowed to be together because then he's mabatal the get. And I asked her bluntly. She says, you know, I'm watching about cancer. Sometimes you could live a long time. The doctor says a year or two, and sometimes I would give a get the one that's not going to work. So we wanted we came up with a different eitzah. We came up with you give a get, and you're going to mekadosh al tanai. So I didn't want to do it myself. I got in touch with the Rabbanim Eretz Yisrael. So we have in Hilchos Yibum this thing. Let me explain to you what happened in Europe. If a person in the times of the Rishonim, I never understood it till I once listened to tape of a barrel wine. He explains this. I never understood this Shulchan Aruch. In the times of the Rishonim, the Gus Maimonides and the Rosh, and there was a thing by the Christians. They worked extremely hard to be Meshamed Jewish people. That was Olam Haba, guaranteed. Get a Jew to join the Christians. And what happened is, if a guy was going to get married, and if he's going to chas v'shum die without children, she's going to be a guna forever. The Meshumah never will give a chalitza. Or, the Shulchan Aruch says another story. He has a brother who's deaf and dumb. No one to marry him. Those days there were, people died and death was more common. But yeah, if I marry you, chas v'shum, something happens to you, I could never should be an aguna forever, because a deaf and dumb brother, you learned Yibum is Chedish is a problem, and he's a Meshumad, he's a brother. He's a brother, but what can we do? So the Rishonim made a Tanai. He says to her like this: Edi Kedushin, he says, Reit Mikadeshesli, you're Mekadesh to me, with the condition that if you die, it's a whole riches the nitzach, but if you die without children and you're going to be naguna, the kedushin was never chal. You follow what I'm saying? No. So let me explain why there's no issue. But you understand it now. Make a condition. If it turns out that Rachmana litzlan we never had children, and I'm a naguna, so the kedushin was never kedushin. So the first question is, you're not allowed to live with a lady without chuppah kedushin. It's either machlokes the Rishonim, the Amam means the Raisa, or the Rishonim means the Essa, some Rishonim alav, the Rabbanan. So that's a Oiva Nissa. So the answer to this is that you only Oiva Issa when she could just walk out. That means, the Rishonim explained this, a Pelagish is also, the Torah didn't want you to live with a lady without a binding something. Today you kick her out. Today, but she cannot leave because you don't know if you're going to die. Or she's still unless the end is going to be die without children, then you don't know. Every day she doesn't know. Maybe she became pregnant already. So it's never, you just can't leave.
There's nothing really wrong with living with a woman without condition if she couldn't just get out, so to speak.
Right, such a case you can't get out.
When they were married, they had kedushin. Retroactive.
Like the actor, yeah. But since he cannot, kick her out, and they had another problem that is shown with this tonight. Chazal say, "Einu de moise belisa bilisness." That's a false sugya in Ksibis. You learn. A person doesn't want to make no matter how pritza a person is, he has his fantasies to do, but he wants his wife to be a marriage. Chazal says a chazukah. So the Rishonim bowed and it says, Adarabba, and the first beer, you have to say the Tanai over. That all the beers I'm going to do is going to be a Tanai that with the same condition that I made with them. The Reb Kiva Eiger didn't like it, and Reb Kiva Eiger added that this happened often till the Reb Kiva Eiger's times. It's a tshuva, and he says, what I tell people to do, it seems like it happened more than once. He should swear that he's not going to be Mekadosha. So we're not choshed that he was going to over his shvua. So make the Tanai Kedushin ala Tanai. You understand? Make the condition. And then make a shvu, I'll never Mekadosh a regular Kedushin. And the Tanai will stay at Tanai. So if whatever happens, he dies without children. So I wanted to do this. He should give a get and make a Kedushin. And I even got a nusach, I got someone because he should know what he's doing, because he's about Shuvah. Ma usa Kudish Barchi. Complications happened, and a week later he died. Supposed to live another 6 months a year almost. No, he passed away. So what happened? They told me, I understood from the conversation that maybe the gators of his mother was not a good gators. You know, when I was asking, what's your question? The din is, you don't only give humus now. It's only brother from one father, brother from a goy. If the father is a goy, even though you're two brothers, it's not called brothers. So we did. Someone got sat down. I had a special guy from New York who knows how to do this investigation. It turned out that his mother's gators was not a kosher gators. Really, it was a reformed gators, not a kosher gators. So Mamela, he's not a Yid. So the two brothers are only brothers from one mother, not from one father. So that's how that's Shat Shmai we had. That's how it's not a problem of she needs Chaliza. It's a really frightening story. So let's start this way. Let's start how it works.
In such a case, do you try to do the Chalitza anyhow, like just...
He didn't want to give Chalitza. He's not from. He was very angry. So he didn't want to ask him. But the bottom line, once we establish... No. He established that it was that it's not kosher. The Moshe says it's not a havam and it's not kosher.
I understand why he hated Yiddishkeit.
There's no question that I just had a lady wants to become a Giyoris. She told me she had a reform Gators. So we asked her, what did they do there? They told her that, join the shul and you'll figure out what you're obligated to do, what not obligated to do. Pay membership. That's exactly what the rabbi said. Did they make you to go? No, they said it's not an obligation, but if you want, you can go to the ocean. So they told her. So there's no bezdin at the tefillah. There's no kabbalas mitzvahs.
No, I think the conservatives are a little more...
The conservatives don't do sometimes more. Yeah, but some of the rabbis are Mechal Shabbos, so it's not kosher as the rabbi. Yeah, no, but I... Yeah. Anyways, let's... So let's start from the beginning. The Torah says, I want to explain this because it's very simple, but many people don't. The Torah says a person dies without children. This week's Pasha, by Yehuda and Tomer, Lo Kishem Alocha, means, let me tell you why Chalitza, after the Zohar was Nizgala, became a huge fear by the Sfardim Ashkenazim. People didn't know what the Chalitza is. You give a Chalitza. The Zohar says what really happens is the person who died is going to be born now again. So Gilgal, let's say by Tomer, she had twins, right? The twins was Eir v'Oinen, the neshumas of Eir Oinen.
They were twins?
No, Eir were not twins, but Tomer had twins.
She was married.
Oh, right.
So it's very complicated how the Gilgal works. It's not so simple as many people think. It's a deep Kabbalah. But the bottom line is that the Torah says if you make a Yibum, and it's a mitzvah to do an incredible Tauber for the neshama, you make Yibum. That's what the Torah says. The Zohar says you don't make a Yibum, you spit. You know that she spits. Spitting me is a how do you say it's a degradation. You don't want to be miyava me. That's it. She has to spit. So the Torah really wanted you should be yabim. Im lo yachboitz, if you don't want.
One of the opinions of the Rishonim is that the ikr is chalitza.
No, it's a machlokes and tanuim. So let me just tell you what the Torah says. The Torah says you should be miyabim. If you lo yachboitz, so the Gemara says Rav held that even in the Torah we ask, do you want her or you don't? It's up to you. So now in the Gemara is a machlokes. There are huge machlokes in the tanuim. One Tana says that if you don't make the Yibum a Shem mitzvah, it's kuravani. It's like almost like a mamzer. Now that's a machlokes harishonim. Why? Because most Rishonim learn Abba Shul didn't mean it seriously. What's the proof? If you remember, you just learned Daf Yomi, the Mishnah says you kind her Tamar. Let's talk with the Torah Marshal. If this would have been like a real Yibum, Tamar would have became Yehuda's wife. He had no idea his boil. But Mishnah says both didn't know. Let's say it happened to be, it wasn't a Yibum. The Rabban says, they considered this as Yibum. But if this would have been Hilchos Yibum, let's say a real story happened, she put up the same trick what Tamar did, becomes his wife. Right. And even both didn't know, the Gemara says. He went, the Mishnah says, he went, wanted to have a beer, and she won. Someone said to me in the sheet, there's a famous story, it was in the news many years ago. There was a lady, about the guy, he said this happened. She that poured, and at night, she told her husband she goes to work at night. And he went she told the husband she works at night flipping burgers. She was selling herself on the streets. And he went to look for someone. And when he met, he didn't know it was his wife. And he gets into the room, it's his wife. Mamish, a story with...
That's not a real story.
She told me, and someone told me this story was in the news many years ago. If it can happen by you, the Thomas said interesting stories. Why couldn't it happen by the Goy Shavel? Saying, the Minat Torah, you're koina. That's the Torah, you're koina. That's not. So the Rishonim ask, why be koina? You're koina Abba Shul. What happened to Abba Shul? So most Rishonim learn that Abba Shul's argument, some of the Rishonim learn, we don't pass like Abba Shul's this Mishnah. Because if you hold Abba Shul, Menta Daraisa, the Mishnah says clearly not that way, the whole sugya. Some Rishonim learn, I think most Rishonim look on all the Rishonim, but they hold it's a chumrah for Abba Shul. It's not Mikaradin, it's a Draban Digizach. Which I don't understand. Why would the Draban make this? If Menateri becomes your wife, he holds with the Drabanan, Abba Shul held, and that's a Mechlokes Rishonim. The Rambam held, we don't pass in Abba Shul. And the Svardim were always Miyabam. I told you, the Orachaim Yekudish, I first went to Eretz Yisrael, I told it to people, but they didn't know. I looked at the grave, it says his wife. I look on the grave next to him, it says a Yevoma. Now, the Rebbe... Next to him. So I say two things I learned. He had two wives, he was Miyaban. Second thing, he's laying between two ladies. We are so holy, we don't want to live between two ladies. Today we have such a hurim. When we're dead, we have a hurim. He lies. It means. Anyway, I'm just saying.
I'm saying when they bury him, we the other ones that I have them. What did he do?
Anyways, I'm just saying. But it says in the Ramah, I'm going to tell. No, the Orachaim. He had two wives. He was a Sfardi. But on one side, I noticed says his wife, and one side is Yevama. So I learned two things. First, that he had a Yevama. Second, that he's buried between two wives. Today, they're afraid to bury a person between two wives. But I looked at two women, right? Two women. Mamish is laying between two women. Anyways, I jokingly want to tell my wife when she goes to the Beis Chaim, she has her parents in New York, so she puts on a tichel. So I always tell her the dead people don't have a hirim. If you want to put on tichel, put it outside the Beis Kvoros. And inside the Beis Kvoros, the dead people don't have any more hirim. There's a Gemara that way, no? What? Babino, famous Gemara. So anyway, so let's just go on. So Minat Torah, it's a mitzvah that Rambam learns to make a Yibum. Now, it's very interesting. The Gemara says, the Elchonon, the Rambam brings down a very fascinating halacha. If it's the sea, it's not going to be shalom bayis. We don't allow him to be miyabon. So the Trimah Sedation says an amavel de gezach. Let me tell you what the Trimah Sedation says. If you remember, the Trimah Sedation says, the Gemara asks a question, let me make it easy. The Gemara says that Yibum is an Esa, and the Esa is Doichaloisisa. You know what that means? if you have an Essa of Yibum, and he's for the Koy Gerusha, Gemara says, why give me Yabim? Essa Doi Chaloisisa. Then the Gemara says, wait a minute. You can't have Essa Doi Chaloisisa because if there's a way out, you don't say Essa Doi Chaloisisa. You only say Essa Doi Chaloisisa if there is no way out. You know what that means? If there's not... What do you say? Lo Sasa is a Gerusha Lekoyen. So there's a Gerusha Lekoyen, there's a Lo Sasa. So the Gemara says, Chaliza b'mokem Yibum eina mitzvah. But to take the determination, if there's a mitzvah's Yibum, and we see there's not going to be shalom bayis, let's say he has a wife already, or the age is such a huge difference and not going to be shalom bayis, we tell him to give chalitza. So see, shalom bayis is doicha, the mitzvah Yibum. So the determination tries to answer a very famous question. Why didn't Rasha marry another wife? He only had 3 daughters. It was not Yotzei the mitzvah. There's a kasha that many Rishonim ask. If you hold the Rebbeinu Gershon and made the Gezeira,
Not when you had the...
when you're not Mekayim the mitzvah, there's a big machlokes. Mrov Rishonim held that the Mukha mitzvah never made the Gezeira. So they ask, so the Termisadation says, you see, there's a mitzvah to be Yabim. If it disrupts the Shalom Bayis, you don't make a mitzvah Yibum. Because Shalom Bayis is the most ultimate thing. Before you bring it into the house, you want to make sure it should be Shalom Bayis. Like what?
Yeah, but when you say, well, after for men doesn't have a...
Yeah, right. So, now let me tell you another. So the Bezdin sees if they want to be Miyaban, again, I don't know if Rabbi Avadi Yosef wrote a very sharp letter. If you remember the 90s, beginning of the 90s or late 90s, I forgot when, there was a lot of bus bombing. Remember that? There was Intifada. It was and there were a lot of shalas of Yibum Chalitza. And the Sfardim were giving Chalitza. And he wrote then, I remember, wow, what a sharp letter. What? Yibum. Want to do Yibum. And he says, we Ashket Sfardim always did Yibum. And he wrote a whole thick letter that if she doesn't have if she's not married, he should miyabin her. If you know, you can't be miyabin that, so you can't have 2 wives. But if she is a single guy, he should miyabin. He should miyabin. Very clear.
Why don't we do Yibum?
So we don't do because we worry about Abba Shul. But the Rishonim say, the Ramah says, it Bezdin sees he's taka doing it l'shem shemayim. We let him do a Yibum. Reb Nachman Breslov had a daughter who married the Rebbe. I don't know the Rebbe's. He went to Eretz Yisrael. That means his daughter found up in Eretz Yisrael, and her husband died. They lived in Tzvas, and the brother married her.
Was another wife?
Yeah. No, he was a bacher, he married her. No, didn't have 2 wives. That means that he died, and was miyabim.
So you see, like, I don't know, it like goes against logic to me, where it's like, if he's attracted to her, no, do chalitza. If he's not attracted to her,
no. It doesn't mean that. Shloil Shem Shemayim doesn't mean that. He has mind money. He doesn't need. He has already a wife. Yeah, but Shem Noi means not L'Shem Ishis. The Rishonim point out, if he has in mind, I need a wife, but I need a wife that's attractive to me. That makes sense. He wants it. If he does it only L'Shem Nur and only L'Shem money, the Rashi clearly says that the whole time Tosfos. If he does it, I need a wife. The brother says, Shimon says, I need a wife. But I need a wife that I've been comfortable with. Then it's okay.
That's not a problem.
He says, I have a wife. I just need another, I need a pretty girlfriend. And that's what you want it, then it's not good. Clearly, the Tosfos and Rashi, all the Chayim Adayik, the way Rashi and Tosfos learn, it's only if you have exclusive money, you have no attention, or you just because you are not L'Shem Ishis. He has a wife already. That's what the Rishonim say. Anyways, coming back, so what was I saying? Yeah, so the Sfardim made Yibum, Ashkenazim didn't make it, made Chalitza. I never saw Yibum. But let me just say another thing. The Torah says that the child born from then, is, you don't have to give the name. You know what it says? Let me tell you a very interesting Zohar. The Zohar says a bluza, I think it was a Bechia and a Yosef were traveling, they used to go on Gulas, came to someone's house, and they stayed in the house, and came Chatzos, they got up, and he sees the owner of the house, gets up Chatzos and learns with the 3-year-old boy. They ask him, why did you wake a 3-year-old boy? So he says, let me tell you a story. My brother died, and I was Miyaba and his wife, and this child was born, and I gave him the name as my brother, and I learned with him every morning by Chatzos. So Rabbi Yosef says this is a schooner that he gave him the same name. You're not supposed to give the same name. And they told him to change the name to Ida. You know what Ida means in the Aramaic? Ida achas, it's the same. Ida means the same. I don't know if English translates it that way. That's what you have in the Gemara. Ida bar Ida Chuma, that started from that name. He said, give him the name. Aleph, you in the Gemara. Ida bar Ida vidu chudai. Aleph you dalad yit means the same. So he says, don't change a child's name to Ida. Say, just like Abai. You know Abai's name really was? Abai was Nachmani. Abai's name was Rabbi bar Nachmani. Rabbi raised Abaya. He didn't want to call the Abaya by his father's name, so called him Abaya Lushin Uviv in Aramaic. That's the Raziri Zal says the Rushatevis, but that's nothing to. I'm telling you, but the Urich says what is the Gemara says Hilchos Nachmani. So the Urich says that who's Nachmani? It's Abaya. And why his real name was Nachmani? His Rabbi, he was adopted child. His parents died, and Rabbi raised them, and he gave him the name Abai. Didn't want to call him by his real name Nachmani because that was his own father's name. So the Zohar said you should give the child the name Ida. Change the name. We Ashkenazim don't change names. We add a name. The Sfardim change name. We don't change a name.
What's the issue with giving the name?
It doesn't say. The Zohar says it's dangerous if you give the same name to the child. He was Miyaba. Let's say his brother's name was Reuven. His child called the child Reuven. Interesting. Anyways, but the Zohar says, you know what the Zohar says? When we say Shemik Kadmeni Achad, remember in the Gemara Ma'it Kuten that by Shidduch you have to worry Shemik Kadmeni Achad. The Zohar says, you know what Shemik Kadmeni Achad means? By Yibum. A child born for Yibum doesn't have a zivik. Why doesn't he have a zivik, says the Zohar? Because the mother of the child is his wife. Itza Nasas Eima Dalushna Zohar. The wife became his mother.
He's the Achad.
That's the Achad. That's why it's so difficult. Now, what?
He gets married.
Don't worry
He
about
someone
that.
else's wife. He gets married.
He gets married. He has a bad marriage. That's it.
Well, he has a good marriage. The daughter now he remains single. So should make it no Achad.
You know, I always tell people come to me, it's my yes Basherta, not the Basherta. I tell them two Moiridiga stories. Dovid the Melech Basherta Zivik, you know what his Bashert was? Batsheva. Batsheva was Dovid's wife, Meshesh's maybe but normal wife, it says Arbum Yoim. Batsheva was his wife, Meshesh's maybe. Do you know Dovid the Melech had many wives? Who did he like the most? It wasn't Batsheva. Michal Bashul, what it says. That wasn't his real Bashert. The Bes Yosef had 4 wives, not the same time. The Bes Yosef long and he lost the wife. His second wife, he had Mishuna di Geshonim Bayis. Bes Yosef had a malach. You know, he had a malach to teach him to the Maggid. So the Maggid tells him, you're not going to have children from her. She's not your old Zivik. But he had Mishuna di Geshonim Bayis. He says, the reason you have Geshonim Bayis is he was a male. Les Gilgal. And he cheated you out. In business, he had to come down and be seconded it, and to her, and she's going to die. Don't be so upset. But for temporarily hardwise like that Malach tells the Bes Yosef. Anyway, so you see that Shalom Bayis is not. It could be your real zivik and you don't get along, and it could be not the real zivik, you do get along.
So if a kid comes out of this relationship,
so that child, now it's a mitzvah to have a child. So the Zohar says that child doesn't have a zivik.
I understand the name enough.
Not the Zohar says, do not give the name. That's what it says in Zohar.
Don't give a name of
Don't give the name of the nifta.
Just give a different name.
Give a different name. So now, give him a different. Well, any name you give him.
They give names here, people make up names.
Oh, so let me tell you what happened.
But if the wife really wants to have the name continue, you don't.
No, you tell them it's a danger.
You don't give in to wives so quickly, wife. I mean, it says in Shulchan Aruch. It says in the Zohar, it's dangerous what we give in. Anyway, so, this caused, when the Zohar came out, you watch history, people were nervous to make a Yibum, nervous to make a Chaliza. It was just terrible. People wouldn't want to make a Chaliza. So the Ashkenazim had a tikkun. They made a tikkun this way. The oldest brother has to give Chaliza, and he gets half of the inheritance.
You'd be incentivized to do it.
To do it. Money, I always tell people, money doesn't just talk, it screams.
The Yibum would be better.
Yeah, but we Ashkenazim didn't do Yibum. I just said, but you don't do Yibum because maybe it's not L'Shem Shemayim. So they didn't encourage it. But the people were afraid to make Chalitza. I know even now, an older couple, many years ago, died in New York, and the guy over here, I told him, you should give Chalitza, it's a tikkun for Neshama. See, the Pesach Shiva talks about it. The Zohar says that even if she doesn't plan to get married, she was 80 years old, she ain't going to get married. But after Biken, you should give Chalitza because the Neshama does not rest till you give Chalitza. Yeah, twice. Yeah.
Once. The second husband died because the first husband killed him.
So anyway, how do you make the Chazal demanded? Minat Torah, how does he become your wife? You don't make Kedushin. There's no Kedushin. Minat Torah, he just moves in. The Rebbanim demanded, should make a Kedushin. It shouldn't look so half-kedik. And then let me tell you what happened. In the times of Shulchan Aruch, which today's dates, Baruch Hashem, there's a Tshuvas Harash, and there's a Tshuvas Noida. Tshuvas Harash is, there was a guy who, Yana Shaygitz, as we say in Yiddish. He was married, but he had a girlfriend living in the house. And it was a known thing that he slept with the girlfriend, and she became pregnant. He didn't have children from his regular wife, and this, like people tell me, the times when the Jefferson had a black children, Thomas Jefferson, he had a Jewish maid at home, and he had a child with her, and he died. So the question was, can we say it was her child? They were never married. So the Rosh says, I'm saying this about Zakun, I was going to look at the Jewish. If she was not married to him, remember someone else. How do you know? So the Rosh says, since they were living under one roof, you could assume it is his child. If everyone other, that's the Arusa, because it wasn't under one house. The one house. That's what the Tshuvas Harash says. But the Noida B'Yiddish says, if they don't live in one house, the Shoyel asked that he was dating this girl, and that means he got separate. I remember now the story. It was Noida B'Yiddish, the Netziv later. The story was he got separated from his wife, and he was dating this girl. And he would go over. The neighbors saw she was a very tznizdigi girl, but he would come over and spend time with her. And he never died, and she was pregnant. So the question is, do we say in such a case also it's probably from him? So the Noida B'Yiddish says, if they didn't live under one roof, that's Machoyes Rav Shmiel. Maybe she had many lovers, as you say in English.
Why wouldn't she be that one? Why can't you just ask her?
She's not married. She wasn't married. It was his girlfriend. And she wasn't living under one roof. It wasn't really living under one roof. It wasn't living under one roof.
I understand, but he's dead now. So why can't you just ask her
Yeah,
what she said?
she does know namanas.
Rav says that since she's moided that she was mazana with him.
She made it. There was no chipik kedushin. She is
herself.
right.
You believe her.
Yeah.
She's saying that she was hefkerded.
You have the Gemara assume but in Eretz Yisrael, let me tell you what happened in Eretz Yisrael. Many years ago, I remember the story, and I might not say the detail. I was going to look it up, and I didn't have a chance. In Eretz Yisrael, there was mamash such a story, not religious, seems like not religious. They didn't have children, for many years. He had a secret girlfriend, and the girlfriend became pregnant. He had a mistress, as we say in America. And when he died, she came forward and said that there's no mitzvah chalitza, even the child is her child. And the wife says it's impossible. He had the problem and can't have children. And so they demanded the DNA. they didn't believe her. And the first halacha, no one knew he had a girlfriend. Whenever they met, it was, whatever the story was. It turned out that it wasn't his child that made the DNA test. What happened was that she was moida. She thought that she's going to act like he became pregnant from him. He's going to leave his wife and join her. That's what the Chaliza was. She got pregnant with someone else. See how the Chazal, and I remember reading the story, how unbelievable Chazal were. She wasn't living in one house. She thought that she can get herself pregnant, he'll think that it's his child, and he's going to leave her. She didn't know, he lied to her. I remember reading the story that it's his problem, not her problem. Understand? DNA it's I looked it up once. It's 1 out of, what is it?
Well, if it's a boy, it's totally conclusive.
It's like 1 in 17 trillion, right? Something like an abnormal number. By a boy, it's like a girl, it's a little less, but it's 200 million. I forget how much. By a boy, it's like unbelievable. So they knew that it wasn't his child. But in the Tshuvah, you see in the Rishonim, they are busy with this all the time. The Noda, yes, his child, not his child. And the Noda has a very famous story. You can learn the end of the Masechta. Another story in Noda, he died, and he was very sick. The next morning he died, and she gave birth 12 months later to a child. And what's the name? The Rav in the city said that two things. We have to give a pet. She was Mizana, without getting Chaliza. And they wanted to have a skum of Noida B'Hida. Noida B'Hida screams. He says, how could you miss a Gemara Mefereshes? The Gemara says, an Iber could be Adi Beis Chodesh. So the Shoy says, but he was sick. He says, maybe the night before. She saw how the terrible the matzav is. She had a beer with him and he died. Maybe. Chazal say it is still Yid Beis Chodesh. All these questions wouldn't be a question. They have the DNA testing today. If it's a boy, like you just said, if it's a boy, it's abnormal. If it's a girl, I forgot that it's much less. But still, it's incredible chances. It used to be not so good. When the trial of I forgot OJ was Muslim, today the new techniques is abnormally accurate.
Do you bother a mess to get its DNA?
Bother a mess? You don't dig up it. What do you mean?
If you have to, you undig a grave to.
Well, you don't need. You have one hair strand that's good enough.
Where do you get the hair strand from?
From his brush.
From his brush.
You see what I'm saying? So you don't have anything.
You don't dig up. You don't dig it up. No.
You don't dig it up, right?
If he has a brother,
There's a Gemara somewhere. They used to put the bones. What was that? It was some test.
Yeah, the Gemara in Bar Benua.
No.
Yeah, also same Gemara over there.
With the bones.
The bones.
So you dig up.
But no, we don't. The Shulchan Aruch says, the Gemara Mefereshes, that once it's buried, you don't dig it up. The famous stories that wanted to know, the Gemara says, the Gemara Basra, they buried him, they wanted to know, they wanted to take him out, they wanted to see if he was a god or not, because he sold his property. The Gemara says two reasons. First of all, Siman Asul Ishtanas. The Gemara says another reason, because it's a bizarre mess. We don't bury out him, we don't take him out. We don't do that. I mean, there was in community a story, a Rav told me, that here in Beverly Hills, a guy's getting married in 6 weeks, and a girl knocks on the door. He says, "This is your child." So he kicked him out, and she sued him in court, and he took a DNA test. It was his child. He was 17 years old. And I don't want to say the name of the school. You could all imagine. It's supposed to be a religious school, but you can imagine. And became pregnant. And she never told it to him somehow. And now she was kicked. The father kicked. Whatever, she got into a fight. She didn't have someone. How do you? DNA is the greatest test. Didn't come out to be yours. And the chances of be this. I remember Rav Yasha was Matar Mamza this way. The whole story. There's a whole story this way. There's another few things I wanted to say. One of the things, what happens if you have, there's a machlokes that is showing them. if you have a ach mishubed, if there's a chi of Yibum and Chaliza. Mishubed, geschmad. One of the Rishonim wanted to say a big chiddush. Since he is a mishubed, the Torah says, ki yeshvi achim yachdov. He has to be achi b'mitzvahs. And if he's not from, he's not your brother in mitzvahs. So they wanted to say there's no zika and there's no mitzvahs Yibum. Well, we're not saying that. I told you before, we rather made a kiddush at night to be soymech, and you understand? Always the Gemara says the word ach uchefi b'mitzvahs. You know what that means? He has to be from his your mitzvahs. Ki yesh ach yachdov. So that Rishonim didn't accept.
Anytime in Halacha,
It says, yeah, the other musharibis, a guy's not from. You're allowed to gichayu chichu imach. A ribis, a guy's not from. Most Rishonim hold you can allow to give him alone beribis. You know that? The guy's a mishumad, you're allowed to give him alone beribis. Place Rishonim, how much you're allowed to give, allowed to take. But some Rishonim hold he's not a brother. He's a mishumad. I mean, the Shulchan brings down the shit. He says Yerushalayim should be machmir because other Rishonim say it's a deraisa, but he doesn't say you're on paskin that way.
The difference between Hamoras das. Hamoras das means that he rebelled.
He rebelled. That's something else. Yeah. Then there's another question. That's another question in the Shulchan Aruch. When is she called the maredes? You know that if he wants to be miyaban and she doesn't have a valid excuse, she's called the maredes. It's a malchayis Rashi and Toises. Rashi learns it has to be like a mikdash shchin. Now, Toises learns has to be mikdash shchin. Toises learns that it has to be making up mikdash shchin is. Mikdash shchin is a horrible disease. I don't even know how you translate it in English. But Rashi says, pieces fall off. That's what leprosy is. Pieces of your body disintegrate. It's a horrible disease. So Rashi learns she could only say I don't want him. It has to be so. Toises learns has to be so. Rashi learns anything that we see. There's a good reason why not. He's ugly. He's old. He's he's a tough guy. He's a bully. We see Rashi and Toises. But if there's no good excuse, she is called a maredes. What is this negeya? You have to remember, a woman who in those days didn't have what to eat. So she doesn't want to take chalitza, he doesn't have to give him a zaynis. And he doesn't have to give a chalitza. Let it be an aguna. That this caused a big machlokes in the Sfardim Ashkenazim. Because we never give what's the name, encourage Yibum. So he can't come and say she's a meredes. You understand? But the Sfardim, they had chachalochom. We not. We don't follow that. We try to encourage.
What's the ramification of her being a meredes?
Just say,
She doesn't want to get married to him. What's the ramification? A regular lady, a meredes means she loses her ksuba.
Loses her what?
Her ksuba. And first they did, let me explain to you what meredes in the Gemara. Let's start from scratch. If a lady says, I want out of the marriage, it's not called a meredes. Let's say he beats her up. It is a meredes if she has no valid reason. Coming to Bez and say, we argue too much. That's not called a valid reason. That's not a valid reason. We say, you know why you argue too much? Because maybe she has an eye somewhere else. But she has he doesn't make panasa. He beats her. Something that really is solid. You can put your teeth on it. So if a woman wants to leave the marriage because he beats her, that's not. But if let's say a lady says, I don't want to leave the marriage. I don't want to be intimate with you. That's called the meredes. And originally the Chazal took money off the ksuba, and then they would insult her. They scream at Miss Medesh, she's a meredes habala, she doesn't want to go to the mikveh. They made such tikunas. See, I want to explain to you something, that all these aguna cases is only an aguna because he doesn't want to go back to her. If a guy says, I want to go back, it's very hard to say she's an aguna. With all these screaming aguna. I was once involved in a case, and I said, look, there's nothing we can do. He says he wants it back, and I really believe him. So he got angry all the time. He has an anger management problem. So what? That's not called an aguna just because he won out. You know what I'm saying? But the other cases is, he doesn't want to marry her. I don't want her. But I'm not giving you a get. That is where you should beat him up. Whatever the halachas is. So by a Yibum, we have this way. If she does not want to take a Yibum, she's called a Meredes. And if he doesn't want to give him Miyabn or Chalitza, we beat him up too. So the Shulchan says we try not to beat up people. So you know what? With Chalitza, there's a special loophole. You tell him, give Chalitza, I'm giving you $100,000. And then you can go to him, ha 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 ha. That's what it says. Or you tell him, if he's a real Amoretz, tell him, give a Chalitza, and that's when she becomes your wife. If the Bezin sees that it's not a fitting, he's just a Drekab. They tell her.
Tell him that this is the way to make your wife.
You follow? He says, they tell him, let's say he's a big Amoretz, you tell him this way, give Chalitza, and by giving Chalitza, she becomes your wife.
He doesn't want to marry her.
No, he's talking about the way he wants to marry her. And we see that he wants either money, or that it's not a fit. She's 20 years old, and he's 60 years old. Okay? By the Persians, this happens. But, for us, Ashkenazim...
It's a recipe for Zunus.
Yeah, the Gemara says it's a recipe for Zunus. So we don't allow that. So Mamela, we trick him, or
Persians love doing that. They do it all the time.
yeah. So or what we do something else. We tell him, I'm giving you money, promise a lot of money, and you get out of money, then you say Shatani Bach. Shatani Bach means
Why can't she just say I'm not attracted to him? What's the big deal?
it doesn't work that way. You know why? Because this is American. You live in America too long. This is. If a lady could say, "I'm not attracted," every lady could walk out of the marriage. She found someone else. It's a mitzvah to miyabin. The Torah says you miyabin. So you get her over. You get over with it. I had a guy told me. I had a therapist. If that's not the problem, I'm not attracted to it. If we see no valid reason, if he looks like a monkey, you're right, or he looks, I don't know, a mukashchen, or we see there's no way. But she doesn't want to marry him. I don't like. I like him more, whatever. That doesn't matter. I had a frum therapist asked me recently. He asked me a shala that he has a frum guy, and he says he's so depressed he can't be with his wife. And he was asking what to do. He says, what do I tell this? He says, I don't know what you have to tell, but let me tell you what I would tell to the guy. I'm not a therapist. The guy would tell me, I say, $5,000, you think you can make a beer with your wife? I think with all his depression, he said $5,000 would do it. Well, you say you can't make a beer. Of course you could. You don't want. You know what I mean? If you tell the lady, you know what? If he would have money, she would all of a sudden become very attractive. If he would be driving a Bentley and live in a big mansion, all of a sudden he's the most handsome guy in the world. Isn't that true?
True.
That's how people work that way.
I understand what it means that she's a Meredes when she's not married.
But it means that she loses the ksuba.
What ksuba? She's not married.
Yeah, but if later, when she finally settle, it's called the Meredes, because the Meredes, you minus off the ksuba slowly. Reuven dies, and Reuven gave his wife a ksuba worth $100,000. Sfardim added to his ksuba. Now, Reuven dies, his wife gets nothing. You know that in a Torah, a wife doesn't inherit. Inherits the brothers. There's only Shimon here, let's say. So, and Shimon would inherit everything. Now, they owe her $100,000 from the state. It's called the Meredes, and if she doesn't want to marry, we minus off from the ksuba, every week, whatever. It's a Mishnah, Sechtes Ksubas, how much?
Shimon keeps all the inheritance.
Yeah, but it is miyaben, or it's give chalitza, then if there's more brothers, if he's miyaben, he gets everything. If he gets chalitza, he shares it with his brothers. But if she doesn't want to, he wants the Red Reuven, the oldest brother, Shimon wants the miyaben, and she says, I don't want, she's going to lose out on the ksuba.
Okay. But better yet, she doesn't do either. Isn't she?
She's stuck.
Married.
Yeah. See,
Gets married.
I want to tell you something. What I watch in life, I don't know what I watch. The ones who ma'agen are always emotionally not well. I never found a guy who's ma'agen his wife is an emotionally well-sounded person. How you say ma'agen? Withholding a get. Ma'agen means, agen means the anchor of a boat. So that's like saying you're stuck. The people don't want to give a get. We hear the stories all over. Whoever I met them, they were always strange. A healthy person wants to move on in life. Look, she doesn't want me. I'm going to be stuck here for 10 years. Let me give her a get and move on. Those are the people, it's always that way. The unhealthy people. What did I want to say?
If she goes and if she gets remarried without getting a chalitza.
There was a famous story in Eretz Yisrael.
Right.
It's a laugh. No, the Gemara comes out, it's not Mamzerim. We paskin is not Mamzerim. We don't paskin like Reb Kiva. But in Eretz Yisrael, there was a famous case, and I asked an Israeli to look it up in the internet, and I don't have the whole story.
The family wanted like $250,000.
Oh, you know the story. And most people, I don't know, and she got married. And now, finally, they want to give chalitza, and the Bezdin says you cannot live with your husband.
Right. She can't stay married to her husband. She's married with kids.
She's married. He didn't want to give a chalitza. They wanted from her she should give $250,000. Why not? So she had ugefiffen, and she got married to someone. It's not from, not talking about from people. So now finally the family, I think someone told me in Israel that someone's sick in the family and they want to get this over and want to give, but the Rabbanut would not allow even I'm not sure, that's what I was asking. They're not allowed the chalitza, whatever, the Rabbanut, they would not allow.
Everything regardless of the chalitza. Why the chalitza is not possible in character?
Right, I don't know. There's nothing to, I don't know why. I have no idea. I was very shocked, that's when I heard this. I don't know, I asked someone to look it up in the Israeli press.
Yeah, crazy story.
I learned already that the newspapers quote and I don't say this story is accurate.
No, but does that make sense? That she wouldn't be able to stay married to her?
Well, there's a Gemara later. Chazal said that if she was Mazana, they didn't want to. It's a knas. Minatoyre is not also. It's a knas. The Gemara has a suffix. The Raisa, the Rabbana, I think Shulchan says it's not that Minatoyre. But I can look it up right now. But Al Kapanim, but that's a knas. We're not talking about. Here we're talking about she's living in a nissa right now. Every bee is alive. Every bee is alive.
She's married 20 years. She's got,
a whole family, of course. So I never heard this lately. It was the first time I heard someone maybe. In Europe, they used to make a lot of problems. People are afraid to give chalitza. Also in Europe, you see the Chuvas Achronim, the Pesach Shiva notice. People lived so far. They lived, who knows the brothers lived. They didn't even know if the brothers existed. There was no, phone and no. One Shuvas Rabbi is asking that his brother was 20 years older than him. How far do you say Cheskes Chai? He has got to be 80 years old now. Those days no one lived to 80 years. And we don't know where he went. Those days with today it's a new world. People, what?
A few text messages.
Yeah, just yes. So no, there's a famous story. There was a Rebbe called the Be'er Ma'im Chaim. You must probably heard this. A very famous Talmud of the Maggid. I think it was a Talmud of the Maggid, a Talmud from anyways, from the early. So his father was a simple Jew. What happened was, his father's brother died without children. He heard about it. He's a very simple person. It was Moise Nefesh to travel to her. Now, then is she supposed to come to him? The Gemara is going to say at the end of the Masechta, we pass with Shulchan, he doesn't have to go to her. You need a chalitza to come to me? Unless there's no bezdin in his city. Let's say where she lives there's a bezdin, when he lives there's no bezdin. But if there's a bezdin in the city, she has to go. The story was she had no money, he had no money, she had no money, she knew she's not going to come. And you can't make a shliach a chalitza. It's not like a get. There's no shlichas. So he mamish was Misa Nefesh to go to his sister-in-law to make sure she gets a chalitza. Mamish Mesiris Nefesh didn't have what to eat and he was traveling a long time. When he gave the chalitza, he had a dream that he's going to have a son that's going to be Meir Ein Chachomim. And that's why he had a son, the famous called Bebeim. Siddur Shabbos, a very famous sefer he wrote. Very, very, very famous sefer. But Al Kaponim, you see from that story, it wasn't like nowadays, you fly into, go to Eretz Yisrael, you give a chalitza. I had a case in Moshe Zachuva from Brazil. He said, what's the big thing, Brazil? The guy wants to do kulas. He wanted to also make a kedushin with it. Tonight, this thing where I learned from Moshe, the guy says, Brazil, so you go to Brazil. He's talking about the 60s. We only soymech, there's no way, and there's no eitzah. I remember the story, but I just noticed, said, what's the big thing? In the 60s, people also went to Brazil, right? That's not. The fire, right? That's not. He says that's not when they made these difficult things.
If she gets married without doing Yibum or Chaliza,
So over alav. The kedushin is chal.
the
We
kids
pass.
are not mamzer.
The kids are not mamzer.
Is there any defects?
Yeah, I mean, she becomes usher to him. I'll look it up for you right now. She becomes.
She becomes what?
Also to leave with the husband.
Husband to the husband.
Yeah.
In other words, she can't, she's living with her, but she can't marry. So why are the kids going to live there? Huh?
Her mom said, "It's the cups." Only the Yibum is also with cups.
That's the only way it doesn't
Only there's one exception.
Let me tell you a nice chiddush over the Moshe, and it's also based on the Shulchan Aruch quickly. Any coin over here? No, was a coin over here? Not a coin?
Yeah.
Oh. So, there's a din, koi sevarchi, that berches kahanim you have to say belushna kodesh. So the Shulchan Aruch quotes a very famous Pri Chodosh. I mean belushna kodesh. The Sfardim say we don't know, and the Ashkenazim say you don't know, between Ashkenazim, the English and the non-Hungarian. It's different. The truth is the only one that's closest to the real Lushna Kodesh is the Yemenites, because they have all the different things. We know there's 2 gimels. We don't have 2 gimels. There's $2. The Zohar says Begat Kafras. There's a gimel and a gimel. We Ashkenazim and even the Persian don't have 2 gimels, right? No. And there's 2 reish. There's a rolling reish and yeah, I'm saying, but the Zohar says so. And all right, so the kitzah, so the Pri Chodesh says, if this is the Lashon Kodesh where we speak, this is it. So the Moshe brings a much diger higher. If you're going to learn the end of the Masechta, you're going to learn, if you don't, you have to say, a Cheirish cannot give Chaliza because you can't say the Nusach. You have to say, Ma'anyu, Libnoi, so you have to say, she has to Aaron, and he says, I don't want to take it. I don't want to take it. She says he doesn't want it. There's a nusach you have to say. And the Gemara says that if you're chayrish, you cannot give a chalitza because she can't say it. So the Moshe says, you have to say Belushna Kodesh. And we don't know how to say it. So it's ma'akiv. Why is it not like a chayrish? So it's a raya beruda that when we say, that whatever we say, when you say Berchas Kahanim, it's the Lushna Kodesh we speak. I guarantee you Moshe Rabbeinu would have come down, he's not going to know what we're talking about. Yeah, because Moshe Rabbeinu is going to be...
Even the Tanakh, we know that by the time of the Rabbi, we had, there were different ways of pronouncing things.
Yeah, rather, like... but a Siboilis, in the beginning of Shoftim, that you wanted to know from Gilad, they were fighting Binyamin, you want to know if he said, you asked him to say a shin. When I grew up, the real Litvish didn't know how to say a shin. They said a sin. So they didn't have. The Radak says, don't wonder. I was in France and I see they don't have to make a tough. It's really a tough and a tough. Why do we say Shabbat? So a linguist professor explained it to me. The Jews who came from Portuguese to America, they have a TH. Oh, you speak Portuguese. There's a TH in Portuguese? In English, there's a TH. The. In Yiddish, in German, there's no the. In French, there's no the. Either Spain or the. There is no TH in Portuguese. So Spanish, you know Spanish?
Not much, but some Spanish has, some doesn't, even in Spain.
Right. So he said, so they gave it the name Shabbat. There's a general called Nathan Greenberg. There was a Jewish general in the Revolutionary War called Nathan Greenberg. Where Nathan? Newson, not Nathan. That they came and they had a TH. It's really Shabbat, and because a tuf is a dugish, dugish. In Yiddish, there's no TH. I remember going to English. We spoke on Yiddish, and English, when they taught us how to speak English. So remember the teacher telling, put your tongue by your teeth, and he said, don't say duh. All the Yiddish Americans say duh. There's no TH in German and Yiddish. So there's a Shabbos. It's not this, it's Shabbat, or the Shabbat. So the Sfardim only say Shabbat, but really there's two. There's a TH and an M. So anyways, the truth is that whatever language we speak, that's ungerim, that's the Lashon HaKodesh. That's why Kahanim can make Berachas Kahanim.